Today we're going to talk about ABM more in a practical sense and how we implement it, how we gather data, how we build campaigns, and basically how we learn from them and use those results. For that, I think it was the best plan to invite Mike and Andy from Hot3. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for having us.
And if you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about Hot3 as well, and we can get it from there.
So yeah, I'm Mike. I'm the client growth lead at Hot3. So I like to position myself as the orchestrator of the choir. So when we've got a new client looking to come on board, whether that's, they don't really know what they want to do, they've got a clear list of objectives, they might be very early days from demand, they might be ABM experts looking to develop what they're currently doing, I orchestrate the choir. So whether it's Andy from a strategy point of view, our dev team, our client directors, our client partners, whoever it may be, I bring the team together to fundamentally build out a program that we can then go and deliver on.
Great.
And Andy Johnson, so I head up client strategy over at Hut3. I suppose it's worth noting that the original founder of Hut3 as well.
Yeah, important.
Yeah, but so if I just use that as a bit of give you an intro to Hut3, I suppose it probably puts it in some form of context. But so we are an ABM specialist based just outside of London. We've been going for quite some time now with a real focus on account-based marketing, which I'm sure we'll get into, and I'm very excited to have conversations around. We rank 6th in the top 100 B2B agencies for account-based marketing. So I think there's some, credibility to be here as well today. And we've won a number of awards as well, which we're really proud to have done, particularly around account-based marketing. So looking forward to having a conversation with you today around some of the key areas that we want to focus on.
Great.
And just looking forward to waxing lyrical around account-based marketing, really.
I think it's important there. The one that I always like to pull out on from Andy is, this is the 3rd year in a row we've been shortlisted. The previous 2 years we've won, but for the 3rd year in a row, we're up for most commercially successful ABM campaign. So back to Andy's point about being top 10 in the UK, we, going back to it, we focus on objectives. Fundamentally, ROI is top of everyone's radar.
Of course.
So, we put our money where our mouth is. We deliver results that actually deliver ROI for our clients.
Yeah.
Great.
So that's the one I always like to pull out, just to get it in for everyone.
So starting from there, for what you just mentioned and before, I would like to also discuss what makes Hot3 different from other ABM agencies. I would like to understand a little bit more when we start a campaign, right? So like I said, we already discussed in the past the theory of ABM, where we start, the data, what's the plan. But I would like to discuss a little bit with you on the framework on how we build these campaigns, right? So if you would like to introduce a little bit more about this and how we can take it from there.
Okay, so probably the best way for me to explain this is, so we use a slide and it's called the cake, okay? So let me explain this like a cake. So imagine you've got a very large cake to begin with, okay? And that cake is going to be representative of how we start to slice up different types of prospects, customers that we're trying to specifically target with different types of programs. Okay, so if we think about the whole cake to begin with, that's fundamentally your total addressable market. So it's not just about account-based marketing. That could include PR, it could include paid search, all of those different types of marketing frameworks that you can basically run into a total addressable market. So if we were to slice that up now and we say, okay, so the next biggest large slice of that cake is about a large volume of accounts. Now they could be your customers or they could be prospect accounts, okay? And there could be lots of different types of objectives that you're trying to deliver into that larger slice of cake, but we would call that an account-based demand type program. So we would look to write the program around engaging with volume of accounts, understanding where we think those accounts may be on any form of buyer's journey, and then in making sure that we are orchestrating follow-up materials or ways in which sales teams, SDR, BDRs, whatever you want to define them as, could then engage with where we're starting to see a measurement of some form of intent that's happening within those accounts. So we would call that account-based demand. If we then took a slice of that again, so we go into a smaller slice of cake now, that may be that there is a specific vertical. So it could be, let's say, healthcare or, software, whatever that might be. But we're trying to then target a much smaller number of accounts. So that allows us to be very much more focused on the challenges that may sit within their sector, It could be that we're very much more focused around the specific value proposition that you want to take into those accounts. So we would call that account-based marketing, but that's a one-to-few type program. Right. Okay. It might even be in that we're just actually going to go into a specific line of business across a number of sectors, vertical sectors. So we call that one-to-few. Then if we go down to literally taking some of the icing off the top, we would call those sort of one-to-one programs. So they are saved for really high value accounts where we can see significant growth potential, and we're looking to then really build around that particular account a solid program, which means that we can not only engage with them but understand what that engagement's telling us and work really closely with sales in order to make sure that we are engaging with them at the right time in order to maximize that sort of opportunity. Now, that could be in a number of different things. So it could be you're after a deal pursuit program. You're going for one specific deal or an RFP, and you really want to make sure that you're going to win that. Or it could just be that you're after sort of defending the base from competition, or you're looking to grow share of wallet. So if we think about the cake and how we slice that, that probably defines in principle the types of programs that we do. So account-based demand, one-to-few, one-to-ones. Within each of those, though, it is worth just mentioning around the framework. So, we work to a specific framework to ensure that we've ticked all the boxes to make sure that any program stands the best chance of achieving the results in which we're after. So I'll briefly go through it, but it starts left to right, and we talk around. So the first point is that gathering the intelligence. That could be understanding the data set that we've got, understanding the data set that we need, doing some insights, desk-based research. Traditionally, we now use a lot of AI tools, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a second. So that's gathering the insight around that. That helps us to go on to the step 2, which is about building the specific strategy around that. So understanding what content we already have, what we need, how we're going to build that, how we profile the audience, what tactics we're going to use. Then at the same time, we're often writing the value proposition into those. So if it's a one-to-many, what's our value proposition into those? If it's a one-to-one, then how are we actually going to specifically articulate the value proposition to that single account based around their challenges and how we can help? Then we move into more of a sort of a campaign development, I suppose, to a certain extent. It's about then aligning the content that we've got, aligning the messaging that we've developed, and basically building out the programs. So a one-to-many would use a lot of programmatic or LinkedIn type scenarios, similar with one-to-few. One-to-one also can use those digital tactics, but can be more aligned with sort of sales, I suppose, to a certain extent. And then we look at how we then build out measurement frameworks, because often in cases we're using lots of fragmented tech stacks. So how do we consolidate all that data and put it into a environment that really tells the story that we need to be able to pass over into a sales environment? And then that last piece of the jigsaw is really about that sales handoff. How are we engaging with sales? What cadence do we need? How do we qualify for those individuals when they should be then specifically talking into accounts of certain people, etc.? So we build out that framework in order to do that and pass that over. So very long-winded introduction, I appreciate. But the framework of account-based marketing is quite complex.
Of course.
But I think if you get it right, selecting the right type of program, delivering across the right type of framework, account-based marketing does generally deliver some exceptional results.
Great. So going back a little bit in there, what you just mentioned in terms of one-to-many, one-to-few, and one-to-one, right? So, because a lot of times people, when they think account-based marketing, they just come in there, they say, oh, great, here's like 2,000 accounts we want to target. Why? Because they're the biggest accounts. We have no signals, we have no intent, we have nothing, right? So how do we clean that up? And what is the different execution of each one of these 3 options, the one-to-many, one-to-few, and one-to-one? And will be the, of course, the main difference we know is the amount of accounts that we're going in there. But in terms of creatives, content, and messaging on these 3 strategies.
Blimey, that's going to be a very long answer to that as well. I think perhaps what's worth doing is if we just think about it from let's think first and foremost about, let's imagine an organization. Let's put it in the context of an organization, okay?
So like a big tech company.
Okay. Let's do that. So a big tech organization would probably come and say to us, right, so, here's a data set. We've got 1,000 target accounts that we want to basically go after. Is account-based marketing right, first and foremost? And should we then deliver that program across that? So what we have done in the past with those types of scenarios is we might look at that 1,000 and we might say, okay, so fundamentally we've got a large volume of accounts here. We might want to think about how we wrap an account-based demand program around that, which would probably give us a sort of level of noise constantly dripping into those accounts. Okay. Perhaps we'll come back to some of the tactics on that in a second, but that's that particular part. Within those 1,000 accounts, we might say, okay, and actually there are 3, 4, 5 key verticals that we must go and win. So it might break down into healthcare, pharmaceuticals. It might break down into transport and logistics. They might break down into 50, 60, 200 accounts. So we then got ourselves some one-to-few type programs, okay? Then within any of those one-to-few, there might be 1 or 2 really key accounts that sit within pharmaceuticals or healthcare or whatever the verticals might be. So we align that as well. Once we've then worked that through, we then can start to think about the tactics and how we deliver those. And I think quite often organizations go at those particular types of programs in a very siloed environment. Yep. So they'll start to do demand programs into the 1,000. They'll do some one-to-few type programs into the smaller clusters, and then they'll wrap a one-to-one program. And what we try to do is look at the overall objectives and then start to align those. So, I'm sorry, I'm waxing lyrically, Mike. Let me go while I'm in the zone. But, if you think about, so in those one-to-many, we might use a lot of programmatical type scenarios. So driving across digital environments, we might use out of home, because we're trying to drive into some of those real key organizations in a volume sort of play. We'll drive them into landing pages. LinkedIn often plays a part in there because we want to also start to understand functions and job titles of who we're engaging with. And if you think about what I said earlier, you mash that data together, suddenly we start to build a really big picture. Bring them onto landing pages, but we want to know what they're doing on the landing pages to start to qualify the accounts. So if you imagine the accounts running through a middle, a horizontal, you've got that large-ish one account-based demand program, lots of programmatical. Then within the one-to-few, we might take a slightly different tack on that. That might just be that we focus on LinkedIn. Might be that we still do some programmatic because there's enough accounts within there to sort of warrant that as a particular tactic. But if we're joining those programs up, we can actually see the volume of engagement from the always on type noise coming from digital programs, and then perhaps our cluster programs as well. Yeah. And that can sometimes actually indicate the accounts that are giving us really good engagement levels, because we can measure all of that to determine which accounts we should take into a one-to-one play. Often one-to-one plays are then determined by sales because they see a massive opportunity. So again, even at a one-to-one level, the tactics to delivering them might still be programmatic. We might want to drive highly targeted ads into a single account across a vast digital platform. Likewise, we might still want to use LinkedIn. We might want them to come onto a landing page where we can see what they're doing. We might want to have the ability to tailor that landing page based on what they're doing in order to then deliver the messages that we want for the cross-sell, the upsell, or even the RFP that we're trying to win. So, that probably gives you an idea of, that is a really good example of a big software type organization that might have come to us and said this is their challenge, and we've aligned those programs, which brings with it huge efficiencies. In the sense that you're not double spending on programmatic, for example, you're not double spending on LinkedIn. You might be reusing content really, really efficiently. So there's lots of benefits of thinking about it holistically as opposed to individual programs.
And I think that's the importance in, there's almost, going back to the framework, for me, there's almost a step before it that is building out the strategy. So where are you on your ABM journey? These big global organizations have probably got some form of ABM strategy. They know where they want to start. Similarly, we work with companies that are right at the start of their demand journey. So for me, it's let the data inform the strategy. Exactly as Andy said, once we see who's engaged at an account-based demand and a one-to-few level, let's use that data to inform the strategy. Of course, sales will want to talk to the biggest accounts. Of course we will. That's where the biggest opportunities lie. Or we've had a big win with car manufacturer A, let's go after car manufacturers B, C and D. Well, actually, we can see that you've seen really good engagement within food and beverage and this account. So use that data to inform the strategy. Where are we going to have the easier foots in the door? Where are we going to give sales those opportunities where it's an easier conversion? Because we've done the awareness, we've somewhat done the consideration by building that credibility within it from a cluster level. Let's then begin to knock down those walls of conversion where we've already got footprint and data and we've been able to track all these different intent signals to then say to sales, we know this is where you're going to have more hurdles. Because we need that, especially at a one-to-one level. We have a lot of organizations, and tell me otherwise, Andy, that want to go after these one-to-one accounts, but you have to have that brand awareness. They have to know your organization. You can't just, here's why you should buy Hut3, here's why you should listen to Hut3, because they don't know who Hut3 are. We need to go through an awareness, a consideration stage before we even get to conversion. So one-to-one really is, as Andy said, it's your deal pursuits, it's growing share of wallet, it's displacing competition, because they know us, we're getting in with that decision-making unit that are already aware of who we are.
One of the things what I'm hearing here, and not only with you guys, but also when we have ABM conversations as well, how important is to you the educational part to the client so they understand what is going on and why are things being done and executed in a certain way? Because on our side as well, some clients require that a lot to understand exactly what's going on, because initially they come to ABM with an idea that, in my opinion, is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So how important is that education bit, in your opinion?
I think there's a couple of things there that I would probably just pick up on. I think first and foremost, there's often an education challenge between a marketing and a sales department. That's one part.
As always, yeah.
Which is really about the principles of what we're trying to achieve with account-based marketing. I mean, account-based marketing is incredibly, and it really should be joined up from a marketing and a sales perspective.
Well, it's ABX now, isn't it? It's account-based experience. It's not just account-based marketing.
Yeah, and whenever we're doing an account-based program, one of the steps is, yes, of course, insight and intelligence, whether that's around accounts or insight as in desk-based research as to what's going on with that account or that cluster. There's also a point where we run what we call an exploration session. And that is where we like to bring sales on board at the very earliest stage. We want their knowledge of a sector or of their specific accounts in order to understand, you know, what is blocking the sale? What's stopping us from just freely being able to go into this cluster of accounts and start to sell? You know, why is the support needed from a marketing function? So I think marketing often get it. They do get it. They get account-based marketing. They'll understand what they're trying to do from the account-based marketing. I think their biggest challenge comes if there is the disconnect with sales. So it's really important to get those on board early. Also, I think in the part of the program, we do a lot of what we call seller kits, predominantly because we're trying to make sure that whilst we had a conversation early on, often that can be a few months down the line before the actual program's gone live. So that seller kit is there to really inform sales again about the process of what we're going through, why we're doing it, and actually would arm them with certain materials in which they can then basically deliver their part of the account-based marketing program, because it's really important that they're involved in that. So that's that one part of education. I think also a lot of people, so tech environments have grown massively in the last 10 years, but particularly in the last few years, I would say, where we can really start to measure engagement at an account level. So you'll hear the words intent, and we'll say them, but everybody talks about intent on accounts, understanding marketing qualified accounts, etc. I think because we can now target accounts and we can now specifically see at very granular levels the engagement that accounts are giving us, whether that's within the programmatic environment, online, you know, through downloads or whatever that might be. Often it gets confused with, so I need to target this 1,000 accounts, and I need leads by the end of next month. And I think that is a big debate that we could be here for hours about marketing qualified leads. And probably the best way, I know we've had this discussion lots in the past, but just think about the words in which we're using. A marketing qualified lead is going to lead a salesperson or lead to another step. Demand is about driving demand into organizations over a period of time to then assess where we think they might be on their journey. Account-based marketing is truly about where we are marketing to a number of accounts in order to do probably a bit of both of all of that, but over a sustained period of time.
Exactly.
So I think for me, the education piece is really about marketing qualified accounts when it comes to marketing. Account-based marketing. I think we need to start to really focus about how we are qualifying the accounts and not seeing it as a lead generation process. I'll give you a quick example. You know, you've got 1,000 accounts. We run a form fill program, whatever it might be. We've spent loads on programmatic, loads across LinkedIn. We've driven a few thousand people possibly to the landing page, and we've got 3 downloads. the reality is we haven't built any form of relationship there. We don't even know if those downloads are going to be good quality. Could be an intern, for example, that's downloaded something because they're doing a research project. So as marketing, we pass those over to sales, and actually they're doing nothing with them. They're rubbish leads. So we've probably broken the relationship even more by trying to play that marketing qualified lead play. So I would go back to trying to educate in the sense that fundamentally, I think that's broken. I think that has been broken for quite some time. We must look to qualifying accounts. So we can now leverage much more data. Where are they engaging? What ads? Are they coming onto a landing page? Are they downloading content, mostly ungated content? Because that helps us to build a profile of where that account might be, dependent on the content they're downloading. If we gate it, we just don't get that true reflection of where the information that they're hungry for and the data that they need. And then over a period of time, we start to build an account and understand the accounts. We'll then start to see the job functions that we've engaged with. We'll start to see the content that they've downloaded, and we start to see a much broader picture of where that account might be. Yes, if we've got any form fills, because we've put that in as part of the program, that will give us a qualification that we can outreach to. But sales guys are pretty good at engaging with people, whether that's across LinkedIn or whatever. So I think if we can just pinpoint to them where the opportunities might sit within accounts, potentially even tell them within a LinkedIn environment, 5 or 10 people that we have known to engage with us within that LinkedIn environment, mix that up with some of the data that we've got from programmatic, where we're seeing the volume of engagement coming from within the account. That data can then be pulled and congealed, if you like, into a really good data story that we can then go back to sales with. And then if we arm them with the right tools, they're in a very good position to start to engage with that. So again, I know I wax lyrical, but the education for me is about the disconnect between sales and marketing, about what account-based marketing truly is. It isn't just lead generation with a new badge.
100%.
And I think for me, the other part is about making sure that we're recognizing how account-based marketing really works. And I think if we understand that, and then build our programs around that, then I think you're in a good place.
Yeah. So exactly what you explained, where people don't really understand what ABM is. I think that through the years and with all the technological advances that we've had and all the technology stacks that we have, and like you said, we have search, we have LinkedIn, we have programmatic itself. I believe that definitely in terms of ABM itself, people come to us with a completely wrong idea of ABM. And that's why, again, getting to that education piece, just clarifying what they're doing is the key, right? And again, now just going back real quick to that big tech company example, right? Let's continue with that. Let's say that we just designed the campaign, we're starting the campaign, and we're going through the first awareness phase, right? So awareness, consideration, conversion. So with all the data that we're gathering from all these channels that we are implementing, right? How are we using this data, and how we then actioning this data at all levels, right? Exceptionally at programmatic, for example, from our side, we can get tons and tons and tons of data that we can actually get and pass on. It's not just the reporting data, but all the impression level, log level data that we're able to pass. So how do we take all of this data from the different sources that we're implementing and then joining it together to actually take action on the next stages of the campaign?
Data stories, we would term it. So again, going back to the objectives, what are the stories we need to relay? Fundamentally, sales just want to know, it's this organization, these job levels that have engaged. However, your CEO wants a completely different story. So we do a lot of work within Looker Studios in particular, because it's tech agnostic. So whatever the different input streams are, whether that's, one big tech platform that they're using, or whether they are using a series of best-in-class technologies, an Astrad, a lead forensics, an X, Y, and Z, we can bring these data points together and tell these data stories. So we can produce bespoke reports. So the CEO will want to know, back to Andy's 3R models, where have we got recognition, where have we built reputation, and fundamentally revenue. And that can take streams from CRM systems and all these different data sources to tell that. Fundamentally, within marketeers, that's where we probably work with yourself, Dan, to then build that next level data down. So we've done some A to Z testing, are they engaging with solution ads? Is it challenge ads? Is it a revenue conversation? Is it an operations conversation? using that data, we can refine the strategy. So we will go live with a series of Astrad ads, and we might have 12 different variations, mightn't we? But 3-6 weeks into the campaign, we can really begin to say, these are the messages that are resonating within this account. And then we can use that data to action it. So we personalize the ads further. So not just, using the company name, but we can begin to tailor the content further down the campaign. We can begin to build one to few approaches based on needs or challenges. So again, it's not necessarily vertical specific. We know because they're engaging what they're more likely to engage with further down the line.
And I think Mike paints a really good picture of what the end result is there as well. So when we talk about those data stories, that's very much a point we're always trying to get to. But of course, to get there is quite difficult. Coming back to your question, Mike's articulated that end point. I think if we think about all those data points, there are a significant volume. We could spend ages going through them all. But let's take, for example, a one-to-few type program, right? So we're targeting within this big tech organization, we're targeting a certain sector. So we'll call it, food and beverage, right? So we're targeting into there. So the first data is that actually, what is the data telling us? So that's where, for example, you guys, Astrad, we give that initial data to you, you'll go and profile that. Not only will we then start to narrow down that data, so we might start with 100 accounts in food and beverage, but you might be able to say to us, well, actually, we can see that there's only 75 accounts that are really showing any level of intent
to begin with.
Exactly.
So we might say, okay, well, let's shrink it to 75 and let's really focus on the ones that we know are showing a good level of intent. We might still include the other 100, but so there's that data point first and foremost, okay? That then starts off with, so now how do we want to target those? So programmatic is a brilliant way for us to do it. So we can be highly targeted to all of those individual accounts across a vast network where we're serving up different types of ads, and we can be very personalized with those ads as well. So dependent on the organization that we're going to and the individuals within those organizations, we can serve up different variants. So again, that gives us a huge volume of data points, okay? If we're running LinkedIn at the same time, predominantly why we might do that is because whilst we'll get a volume of data of the accounts that are engaging, we want to know specifically, are we landing at certain job functions and seniority? LinkedIn's brilliant for that for us because we can 100%. Really dive into that data set that sits behind a lot of the clicks, the impressions, etc. But we can really look at demographic data there. So if you think about mashing those two bits of data first and foremost into a data story, what's that telling us? It's telling us the accounts that have engaged the most, and it starts to give us a picture of the individuals within the accounts that are also engaging. So we can really start to build that particular point. If we've also taken them onto a landing page where we've deployed, let's say, lead forensics, okay? So that then tells us the accounts that have landed on the landing page. So we've not just now recognized them in the digital programmatic or LinkedIn, we actually now know they've come onto that landing page and we start to see the content that they're engaging with. Okay, so so can we enrich that data? Can we now look around that account? Are there any ways in which we can actually specifically look at that account and grow that data set within there so that we can perhaps go out with an email nurture? So for example, Cognizant data might integrate and does integrate within LinkedIn. Again, we've got a huge volume of more data points there of which we can then go out and gather further. Now, we haven't even spoken about some of the other data points. So it might be that we know it's food and beverage. We know there's a food and beverage event at the Birmingham NEC next Thursday, and we want to do some out of home around that. So we then really focus around the targeted 100%. Campaigns around that out of home. Again, you guys would be very good at helping us to sort of understand that and know how we can use that out of home. So, but again, that gives us other data points. Okay, perhaps not so granular as in the digital data points where we know there's been actual clicks and engagements with content, but we know that we'd have probably impressed across a number of individuals, etc. So, there's those data points as well. And I think going back to Mike's point at the beginning, so if you think about that volume, okay, and we're probably within a few different tech stacks. So we might be within LinkedIn, we might be across Astrad, we could be within lead forensics. Individually, those show great campaign data, but actually, what is the data story that they collectively tell? That's what's important. And that's where even if you have a tech stack that is professing to do all of those things in one platform, which there are a number of, and they're very good, does it really still tell us the full data story? So that's where Mike's mentioned about Looker Studios. We might consolidate that down, hence the reason why now within our agency, there are data and insight specialists because it's a big part of what we do. But they're then looking at that data, but they're also crunching that, using AI tools to crunch that data.
Yeah.
And Mike's absolutely right in that we do then tell those data stories. But we'll have worked out, so what does the CEO want, or what does the CMO want to know? But what does the ABM want to know? And what does the individual person doing the LinkedIn programs want to know?
Yeah.
So we're servicing that data in lots of different ways within those data stories.
Sure.
But going back to your point, there are multiple data points because we now can target individual accounts and individuals within those accounts so accurately and really personalized.
Yep.
If we think about it, and if we think about how we're going to deliver those ads and what the different messages could be, you know, in the ads, for example, you know, like I've mentioned, you can be really highly personalized into those individuals. So that gives us so many different data points. And that is the reason why we feel as an ABM partner to a lot of the clients that we work with, you know, it's incumbent on us to try and surface that data into a way in which they can actually start to digest and then pass into the right sort of teams, whether that's sales or others from within that organization. Dan, you deal with a lot of the data, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, we lean on you a lot for
Yep.
that analysis of that data, particularly early on, and then we lean on you and your expertise to make our recommendations to us as to what you think is going to be probably the best.
Right at the start. How do we profile it? How do we split these accounts?
You look at a lot of data. What data do you find the most interesting?
So just going back to what you said a moment ago about the limitations of each one of the tech stacks, right? So in programmatic, we have a ton of capabilities, not only before campaign starts, being able to enrich the data that we receive, to get an initial list in there and then do lookalikes in terms of firmographic and also intent, and then break down the strategy, what we're going to do. Because like you said, if we have a list of 100 accounts, and from those 100 accounts, perhaps we get 15, 20 that are showing intent to the product that the final client wants to promote or wants to get a sale from. That doesn't mean that the rest of the accounts we're not going to target, right? But however, there might be a lower priority, not only in budget, but also in bid. What is the actual CPM? We're getting to consider impressions, CTR that we want to get clicks. What are the environments that we want to target on, right? If we're going to say we have this 15, 20 lists of accounts that do show intent, we might not only want to go after them on a desktop environment and not just with display. We want to go also on mobile. Careful with mobile, of course. In ABM, that's a little bit difficult to tackle, but it's just understanding how we're going to build that. And each client, each campaign is, as you know, completely different. Has nothing to do one client to the other, not only because of the kind of product that they're selling, but also the kind of industry and the kind of accounts that they are going after, right? But in terms of being able to enrich that data before the campaign starts and then compare that data we just enriched and we actioned, and after the campaign finished, we said, oh, actually, these accounts that we're showing intent, we're seeing that they're not engaging as much as we thought that they would be. So, sorry?
No, I was going to say, because this could tee you up here, but for a fool. But I remember, so early conversations with you on a particular program, we were talking about clients' expectations and a real focus on them being digital first and specifically mobile first, which, you know, there's been lots of conversations, particularly points in time when everybody was really focused on mobile first because we thought that was where it's at. But then the data told us something quite different, right? And I think from a B2B perspective, I'd just be interested to hear your point.
Let's take it on a logical sense, right? And that's, if we take a raw campaign and we deliver that campaign, we'll put ourselves as an example. So we are the client, Astrad. We deliver a campaign from ourselves and we deliver that data to the same accounts on desktop and mobile. Yeah, of course, mobile has way more traffic.
Yeah.
And especially in mobile, when you're looking at traffic, about 85% of that traffic is in-app traffic, right? There's not much of web traffic. Of course, you're going to have way more volume on mobile, but where are you actually delivering, right? Do you want to see your ad, me as Astrad, to a potential account that we would like to reach out to after they just played a game? I don't think that is really the way to go. That's why we prefer narrowing everything to desktop. But mobile, you can deliver. You just, like I said, you have to be careful in there because you've got tons of traffic, tons of clicks. Of course, are you going to get in there? In-app traffic, you'll have a higher CTR than web. especially desktop web. But that's the thing. Do you want clicks, just
right
traffic
engagement
by itself that has zero value? And this also ties up to what we said at the beginning of if we're running a campaign that we want to get form completions, it's like, what's the point if these form completions, these leads have zero value and there will actually not be any kind of actionable?
Yeah, and I think that comes back to some of the points we probably were making earlier. So, because I think what I'm trying to get at there is that we talked about the data, and you've just probably illustrated really well that yes, we're probably not going to leave out mobile, right? We're going to include mobile, but we probably also know the data will tell us that our better conversions and our better engagements are coming through desktop, right? Yeah. Which is almost like, well, everybody's saying let's go mobile first through a period of time, whatever. But what the data's telling us is, well, yes, it will give you higher volumes of clicks, higher volumes of impressions, because there's probably more use there. But actually, if we're looking at conversions, then we really want to focus on the desktop. And again, that goes back to the point of we've got so many data points. That's where you really need the expertise to cut through the volume of data to understand the meaningful data and tell the data story that we need to basically understand.
And that's for me, again, you know, the shift in having a strategic partner. You know, yes, you could buy a piece of tech that does all of this, but you need someone who can interpret that data. There is a reason, you know, excuse the sales plug, that we partner with Astrad. It's because we have expertise like you've just covered there, Dan, to help us refine a strategy. You know, we're tech agnostic, we're experts in ABM, but the marketing tech landscape, as Andy said, is so vast and so forever changing. We don't know. Like, we've just been having lunch talking about programmatic ads where you can run polls and stuff. That was something that we didn't know until 2 hours ago. So actually leaning on your expertise and your recommendations is actually, this is what we can do. We can deliver better engagement. And exactly as we were saying, you know, a static programmatical advert will tell us the company that's engaged, where it was served up, all that great information, highly useful data. However, let's go back to this organisation that's at the start of the account-based journey. They're not entirely sure what message is going to resonate. We can deliver in advert polls, so we can begin to build a picture exactly as you were telling us at lunch. So it's all, again, you know, it's building data, but get useful data out and have, you know, an individual internally or a team or external resource that can actually help you interpret that data to make meaningful actions. Because otherwise it is just another tool making more noise. You know, your CRM has told you that Hut3 have been on your website 10 times. It's a lead. Is it a lead? It's probably not, is it?
Yeah. And I think that example that you just gave is perfect because, and going back to what we said of mobile, so yes, we can create these ads that are interactive for the client, rich media ads. They can answer a poll, they can play a mini game, whatever it is. We can build it in there as a HTML5 creative. And that's a perfect example because that specific kind of ad, we wouldn't want to deliver on desktop because the engagement would be minimal, right?
Yep.
That kind of ad is the perfect ad to deliver on mobile for ABM. 100%. So that's why I'm saying that when we're building all of these campaigns, something that would be completely nonsensical on a standardized generic ABM campaign is actually perfect and is the way to go, right?
Exactly.
And it's not only that, we get the polls and everything, we get the results, but the fact that we can tie the results and the answers of those polls or those engagements, whatever kind of ad that we're doing that the user was able to interact with, and that we get, again, actionable data from a real user, from a real company that then we can use for the next stages or other parts of the campaign that are completely have nothing to do with programmatic itself, but are useful in other parts of the.
And it's an interesting point, actually. It made me go off on a slight tangent, but it might be that programmatic is a part in the program that is, it could have a specific window of the program where we're using it. So it could be that we're looking at actually going back to that tech company, we're still looking in that 1 to few window. Yeah. We want to take that 60 accounts or however many it might be. And actually, we want to take them through a journey because we want to tell them that within their sector, we're first and foremost very specialist and expert in their sector. And we want to broad brush that. Yep. Then when we start to understand the accounts that we've engaged that level, we now might want to specifically tell them why we're experts. So it could be, proof in case studies, or it could be ebooks or whatever that might be. We might then choose LinkedIn to deliver that particular program. But we might then say, well, we're only going to target the accounts in LinkedIn that we know that through our programmatic phase, we've engaged with.
Exactly.
And then within LinkedIn, we now might have taken that down to a number of accounts that is probably, I don't know, less than 20. Now we might run a specific program to invite them to a webcast. The reality is that the sign-ups of those webcasts will probably be higher on the basis that we know we've gone through a process of engaging with the accounts broad brush by way of programmatic, driving LinkedIn to specific content. Then by their third touch with us, we've probably then be able to convert them into some kind of, I daren't almost say lead, but you get my point. But we've got some data on them in which we could then start to act. And the interesting point for me on that, sorry, Mike, is, and I want to make sure I get this as well, because this is within the LinkedIn environment, we gather so much data that people do not use. So if we go into those 40 accounts, let's say, for example, because they've been determined by our programmatic at the beginning, we're then looking at predominantly people will look at impressions, clicks, and probably the accounts that have done that, within LinkedIn. But if you actually go into the back of that and you download all the demographics, now we can know their geographies. Now we can know how long they might have been within the organisations. We will know their specific job functions. We might know job titles, albeit there was a bit of a question mark over job. It's open field, so we've got to be careful with job titles. But if now we actually utilise the LinkedIn tools that are available to us and replay that data back in, so Sales Navigator, for example, being one, if we know that organisation A has engaged and we know the demographics of their location, how many years they've worked in the organisation, suddenly LinkedIn through Sales Navigator can start to identify who 4 or 5 of those people might be. So, that in itself is a form of data that we really do try and encourage people to use and leverage within any account-based program, because again, yes, we'd love it not to, but people do still want those marketing qualified leads to pass. Well, that is a very good source of engaged qualified leads, if you like, that we know that those individuals have engaged with our content in some capacity.
I mean, I think I was just going to kind of, reiterate the point, and sorry for the listeners to jump around. It's using that data to inform the strategy, though. The programmatical informed the accounts in which we should focus on the want to view level, and we can take it into different channels. I think the thing that I just wanted to pull out on what Andy was saying is programmatical doesn't end there. And again, it's working with these technologies and people that can help you. Yes, the programmatical's done that awareness piece. It helps us to build that picture, but then fundamentally, rather than turning it off, letting it stop making its noise, stop giving us those data, how do we then take it to the next level? So we then use the one to few approach, and we help you. We give you HTML5 ads. We say, here's the ebook that we're going to start going through this consideration stage. We've got the case study, as Andy mentioned. Dan, how do we move people, through this consideration stage? Is it, a series of awareness ads? We've already done the poll. We now start click through, view the case study, or, download the ebook, those kind of things. So programmatical still plays a part. We just, as we would do with the campaigns, we personalize and we focus our efforts. So it may be that come the end of a 12-month program, programmatical is only serving into the 20 accounts, as Andy mentioned. We've gone away from targeting the other 980 because we've not seen engagement. So let's stop just burning budget within those accounts. Let's use the data to inform the strategy and spend our money where we see an engagement. We probably should have said it right at the start and people will be bored of hearing it. 5% of your total addressable market, total addressable audience are in market at any one point. You need 7 pieces of content minimum. Your decision-making units 8 to 12. There's all these factors that are against us as marketeers. Use the data to inform the strategy. Use the data well to inform where we're spending budgets and, the accounts fundamentally that get our attention.
Great stats memory. Right, well done.
Well, someone was clearly doing a proposal this morning.
3 to 5%, absolutely bang on. Something like 5 to 6 pieces of content will be engaged, or 5 to 6 individuals will be engaged with, between 7 and whatever pieces of content, and then you've got, up to 15 decision makers.
And again, I suppose, going back to defining a strategy, looking at your channels, looking at your tactics, we're doing it a lot at the minute where we're running C-level programs alongside a broader positioning statement. So again, let's go back to the tech company. They offer a solution. Let's say it's cybersecurity. That is their thing. However, the conversation at a C-level isn't, look how amazing our technology is. It's, we can stop this, we can stop that. It's business challenge level stuff. So you know, when we talk about personalization from a one to few and a one to one, without wishing to muddy the water, you can think of an individual account as a one to few, because there is so many different decision makers within that account that we need to influence, that all have their own different agendas, they all have their own different challenges and priorities. Again, LinkedIn programmatic allows us to target those job functions, so we can deliver an account awareness campaign, but then we can say to the HR person, we know that you struggle with recruitment. We can say to the finance person, we know you're worried about the bottom line. We can say to the operations director, we know you're worried about keeping the lights on. We're influencing multiple decision makers. Again, going back to the reporting, reputation, recognition, relationships, we're influencing more decision makers. It's an easier conversation. How many times would a salesperson, or we get a fatal word again, a lead within an individual, they say it's great, and then they've got to go and get sign off from another 6 individuals who know nothing about us as an organisation, our accounts, our solutions, what we do.
I think it's interesting with just listening there what Mike's saying. I think the other thing as well, we probably don't do enough within account-based marketing is, before we've even gone to paper with strategy and tactics and things like that, is that if we think about the accounts that we're trying to engage with, like Mike just mentioned there, you know, there might be C-level, there might be lots of individuals that we're trying to then engage to influence that. The reality is that just because we know we have a solution that would be really beneficial to that organisation, because we're the best at cybersecurity or whatever that might be,
doesn't mean people want to
doesn't mean
listen.
they're going to necessarily want to buy it instantly. They probably do need it, but they just don't know they need it. So again, I'm just trying to squash that whole, let's run a campaign, get some marketing qualified leads, pass them to sales. We're going to basically sell loads of cybersecurity, right?
Exactly.
It's just not going to happen. So you've got to think about those programs and over a sustained period of time, driving different levels of engagement. Hence the reason why programmatic and all the things that we've mentioned are so important. And that's the reason why we've got to let the account signals tell us when we think it's the right time to go into that account.
As well, and I think it's really important, you know, let's take, you know, the cybersecurity company. Let's think about the audience. It's an IT manager, an IT director. Fundamentally, they are the, you know, the final person to sign the contracts. How many different organisations are trying to speak to that IT director? Hundreds every day. I mean, you probably work with hundreds that are trying to do it yourself, Dan. So why would we not try and have a conversation with the finance director, the operations director, and actually let them influence IT internally? Because we're more likely to get an engagement. You know, if we go back to the whole old school marketing, top down, bottom up, IT directors are so in demand, it's so expensive to get engagements from them because everyone else is trying to engage them. Let's influence the other decision makers, because let's be honest, if you're the IT director and your finance director and your ops director are saying, hey, you need to go over there and have a conversation with this Astrad, I think they can really help us. That's where you're going to get the engagement.
Can I mention one other thing?
Go ahead.
This isn't a plug, but we've mentioned we're award winning, blah, 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 right? but
25 minutes.
There is one campaign that always sticks out in my head. It was done back in 2019, I think it was. It was a tech vendor. And they were basically trying to sell more licenses into organizations that they'd already sold into. Okay. If you think about it, their fundamental gatekeeper, if you like, of their relationship was in IT. But they knew that their licenses could be really beneficial in HR, in marketing, in lots of different lines of business. I think we identify 5 as HR, marketing, finance, and a couple of others. Okay. But historically, they'd always targeted the IT directors because that's who bought the licenses. Okay.
Right.
This program focused on creating content that talked about their platform and how it could really help marketing from a visionary perspective. Likewise with HR, okay? And they were specifically run into those accounts, just targeting those accounts, but into those specific lines of business.
Right.
And it was one of the most successful campaigns we ever ran. And what happened was that we influenced the decision makers within their line of business, who then influenced the IT decision maker, who then came back and bought more licenses. So that is a classic example of an account-based program where you're thinking away from who you normally land in with, recognizing there's a need to land across multiple different job functions, and then thinking about the tactics of how you're going to do that. Okay, this was LinkedIn, but you could also have used programmatic in order to do that.
I think that example you just gave is perfect for my next question, because all that we're discussing here in terms of analysis, strategy, actually the campaigns, the data, etc. What's coming to my mind is time. So how much time would you say that a successful, and we're going to define what success means, but a proper campaign or program should take? And before you answer, is we have clients that come to us and they say, oh, we have this ABM budget. They don't understand what ABM is, first thing. Second, they say, we're going to run it for 1 month. How many leads are we going to get? So I don't think that you're getting the game, mate.
Yeah.
So in terms of time, what do you think, what in your experience would be the optimal or minimum amount that a program should run for?
You're such a pessimist. It's 3 weeks. It's not a problem. Classic story, by the way.
Yeah.
Heard that many a time. And again, I would just go back and say at that point, you've got to recognize that, are you really looking for a book and bill program? If you are, do you just want to put a form that says, come and have a sales meeting with me next week, throw it out there and see what you get? Because that's the reality of what they're trying to do there. I would say historically, you really do need at least a 3-month window to get any form of data that's probably going to basically give you anything meaningful that you can really utilize.
At minimum.
I would say, I would say some of the best programs, and you're going to tee me up now for something that I can tell you about, but some of the best programs are where you've got like a drip feed that's going on over a sustained period of time, trying to drop in on the 3 to 5% buyers that are ready to buy at any one point in time. And then you sometimes hit them with small spikes of activity at certain peaks in order to sort of try and drive that. So the longer you can leave it, and this is the difficult thing for marketing teams, and I understand that, any form of digital campaign, regardless of actually whether it's account-based marketing or not, the longer you leave it, the better it is always going to become over time. Because you're only going to become more precise. You're taking out the stuff that doesn't work and you're leaving in the stuff that does work. If we know a certain ad hits a certain job title, goes onto a landing page and converts, ding, just do more of that. But to get to that point, that can take some period of time. I think if I took you on a typical journey of a 3-month program, if you ran month 1 is about awareness by dropping in some kind of ads or content and really focusing on that. You then lift the accounts that have engaged in that awareness. Now we might drive in with some other awareness, consideration type piece of material. Then we might go into month 3, and at best now we can probably get them to convert in some capacity. But that is still short. But I also appreciate that budgets are tight and people do need to see
proof of concept.
Proof of concept, so they need to see results in a very short window. What I would say is that, and this is really easy to say and always very difficult to do, that's for me why wider planning you can do, and the more you can align those one-to-many, one-to-few and one-to-one programs, the more significant savings you will get. And I'm going to give you a quick example, which is what I said you teed us up for. So going back to this cyber company or whatever it was, we've got one-to-many where we're basically driving in over a long sustainable period of time. We've then got 3 clusters of one-to-few, and then we've got some one-to-ones that sit on top of that. So our one-to-many is basically making sure we're constantly delivering a swell of noise into all of those accounts. It's predominantly programmatic. It's relatively low cost in terms of clicks or whatever we want to call that. And what we're doing there is saying, well, we don't need to go and create brand new content. A PR creating a report this quarter. Well, let's use that PR. Let's just make sure it drops into our account, and we make sure that it might have gone out as part of a different department's campaign, but we want to make sure, aligned to our ABM program, that we are drip feeding some of that stuff. A different department's come up with, I don't know, a webcast. Well, let's drop that in, see if people want to attend that. So that low level volume of noise can just be about reusing content that's already in. If we then got that content and we're saying, actually, that report would be really interesting to food and beverage or transport and logistics, how can we efficiently create that piece of content without doing too much of a plug? That's the reason why we've developed our agentic AI solutions, because we can now take that content, we can use the value proposition of the specific vertical, and we can remix that content now to be more relevant to that vertical. So we haven't got to go and create lots of brand new content, we're just remixing it. Then we're running that in with probably slightly different tactics into that one-to-few, and we're seeing, is that going to perform better than just our low-level noises at the top? We might then take that one piece of content and personalize it, again, using more AI agentic sort of workflows, into a specific single account where it's highly personalized, and we're delivering that in our very one-to-one focused tactic. So going back to your original question, which is about the timeline, I think, yes, the longer you can leave it, the better. I think 1 month is very unrealistic, but still sometimes, we can always try.
It depends on the objective, doesn't it? If you've got an event in 4 weeks and your objective is just to drive awareness within a set list of accounts who are going to go, a month will achieve that target.
But that's a really different. That's exactly right, Mike. Because that's
still an account-based marketing.
It's account-based marketing strategy, but not really the execution.
But it is an account-based marketing strategy if it's aligned to the broader strategy.
Yeah.
If it's just a one-off, it's not really a strategy, is it? It's a book and bill. I'm trying to get some stuff. I'm trying to get people to come to that event. If you've got these programs that are going on into different clusters of accounts, all accounts, single accounts, you've got an event where you've got low attendance next week, well, throw it out to a specific cluster of accounts in a one to few. It might even be they come from 2 vertical sectors and you're going to a specific line of business. You want to go to the finance director or the IT director to see if you can get some sign-ups there. But we know we'll be able to select from within those accounts where we know we get good engagement. So we've got a really good chance. And that's the reason why I would always advocate looking at the overall strategy, aligning the programs for significant efficiencies.
So just to put it in a very simple manner for people to understand, when we're running a campaign, it's not just the actual direct results that we're getting from the campaign itself, but it's actually how we can use that data and the value that that data has to then action it directly. Like we said, if we see that there's a lot of engagement from a particular set of accounts, we can then reach out directly to those accounts, right? Absolutely. And that is just a byproduct for free, let's say, that we get from that campaign that we can then action has a ton of value. And that's another thing that I believe that a lot of people out there and clients out there, they are not really seeing and understanding what kind of value that has of knowing like, oh, look, this account in particular has engaged, has a CTR of,
I think we've probably covered some of that stuff, and it's worth reiterating on that, because that's the reality. If somebody comes and says, I need we've got to go out to these 100 accounts, and I need marketing qualified leads by next Thursday. Okay, so we look next Thursday and we've got 15 marketing qualified leads. Well, if we could get 15 marketing qualified leads in that short space of time. But you get a few marketing qualified leads. We pass that back and they pass it back over to whoever, and they say, well, we didn't really get a great deal of value from that. We only got 5 marketing qualified leads or whatever. But actually, have you even considered all the other data that sat behind that in that short space of times? So what accounts have we engaged? What accounts have we impressed on? How many of those click through? How many of those engaged with the content, but they didn't download it because it was gated?
Or how much time they spent in the actual landing page and actual website. There's so much out there that you could see. If I see an account that maybe they haven't engaged with us, they haven't filled the form with us, but we see that, but this person from this company has been on a website for 15 minutes checking out. I mean, that has way more value than this account that technically showing intent. They're showing intent, but they've done absolutely nothing, right? So it's reiterating again the value and importance of all of that data that's on top of the table that we can use and that people are really not engaging with.
And I think that goes back to like Andy saying, like the longer you can leave it, the longer you can build a picture, the more you can do with this data, the more likely the conversion. A 3-month campaign, yes, it will begin to deliver data, but the company that's speaking with us at the conference in a couple of weeks, they began to see results after 9 months, because exactly like we're just saying, that short burst of activity ended. Right, great. We've got these opportunities. We've passed X, Y, and Z over to sales. Actually, what am I now doing with that data? Because I've got, 3 organizations that I've passed to sales, but I've got another 17 that were showing intent, that were showing really strong signals, like you say, Dan. They were spending 5 minutes on the landing page. They downloaded X, Y, and Z resources from the landing page. If I can then go and retarget them, if I can use programmatic, if I can use LinkedIn, I can continue to serve up content to those accounts. Maybe through another 3-month burst campaign, we're going to see better engagement. It's not a case of, as most marketing campaigns traditionally were, produce new content, push it out, syndicate it, call it what you will, try and get some leads off the back of it. The longer we can keep going, the more we can reiterate, the more we can begin to reuse that data.
But it's better the results. That's account-based.
That's account-based. Yeah, I agree. Yes.
That's where we're looking to build out knowledge, intelligence on individual accounts over a sustained period of time to understand where we should be pinpointing our focus at any one point in time. If we're including account-based demand and one-to-few type programs. Yeah, if it's a one-to-one, slightly different. But I'll just go back to your point as well earlier. So you mentioned, you're saying about there's all that data that we're not using. Imagine for 1 second you download all that data. It sits on your desktop, right? And you haven't got a clue where to start with that data. What is that data telling you? I'll go back to the point of the data stories, right? Forget that just for 1 second.
Yeah.
You took all of that data and you put it into an AI state of some description. Okay, let's say you put it into ChatGPT and you said to ChatGPT, pick up the, I want you to be a data expert, first of all, load its data and say, now tell me, what is this data telling you? It would probably come back and say, well, actually, it might be worth you specifically focusing on 5 accounts because you've seen a high level of engagement. Now just do a small campaign around that to do with something else. So that's my point. My point is that if you think about it logically, because we're tasked with the marketing qualified lead, that means we're only going to deliver the marketing qualified lead, and we leave behind huge amounts of data that's really, really valuable to us from a marketing perspective. So that's the reason why, for me, account-based is why I love it so much, because over a period of time, it is like a snowball. The more we push it, the bigger it gets, basically, and it becomes more useful. And that does require people sometimes to hold their nerve. And we've seen that lots.
And we're going back to exactly what we said of the education, right? So all these times, so they need to understand, of course, not only like why, instead of running a burst of 1 month and see what happens, why do I have to run a campaign for 6-9 months, right? And kind of trust, and because they're not understanding what's going on or what the strategy is. Because again, like I said, I believe that people have a very limited understanding, a very direct understanding of what ABM is. And that's why I believe it's such a big chunk of the work that have to do with clients for them to understand what is going on, and that snowball effect as well. You just mentioned something now and a little bit before about, of course, AI, ChatGPT, etc. We know everything that AI is doing in the world, how it is being implemented, but I would like to understand and hear your perspective, ABM specific, how AI is changing the game.
I think it's a separate podcast, is there?
Well, no, I'm loving this question. So it's changing it significantly. So I think if you think about, you ask any account-based marketer what's on their wish list, right? And they'll say to you, I want to basically, for as small a budget as we can, perhaps not on the wish list, but my point is that we want to be able to run into lots of accounts. We want to be able to use different materials, and we'd love to run personalization into multiple accounts to do sort of almost like a one-to-one. But the reality of delivering that is that it's very time consuming. It's very expensive. It's leveraging huge amounts of resource from within a team that probably isn't there in the first place. Okay. So AI really does give us lots of ways in which we can solve a lot of those problems. So if we think about 4 really key things that are involved in account-based marketing, gathering intelligence is the first thing, showing up with the right information or the right content, being as personalized as we possibly can be, and understanding the data and what it's telling us. Okay. So they are 4 key fundamental things that sit around account-based marketing. So AI can really help us to gather that intelligence very, very quickly. Okay. Before I probably come on to that, agentic AI for me is the current solution to a lot of what we're talking about. So not an individual AI tool, because we cut ChatGPT. Great in 10 seconds. It's amazing in probably a minute. And then your final post comes out an hour later by the time you've worked with it and you've prompted it. Okay. So it's great. It's a great tool. But then how do I repeat that? So if I'm trying to do it into multiple accounts, how do I do that time after time after time? So one tool for me isn't the solution. Agentic is the solution. So agentic AI is when you're joining up multiple tools and they can fundamentally all have a conversation to each other in order to continue on a
like a chain,
a process.
Exactly.
But it's you can repeat that process. Okay, so coming back to the point I was making. So we've built actually 4 agentic AI tools. Enigma Studios has got Enigma Insight. It's got Enigma Remix, which remixes content. Enigma Personalization does exactly what it says on the tin. And then Data Stories, which is basically helping us to tell all those data stories. So in the immediate, what that is allowing us to do as an ABM specialist is to turn people's ambition into action, really by being able to, highly personalized content at scale, quickly and efficiently. And we can remix content to go into different verticals. We can gather data and insight that used to take weeks and cost a lot of money and would sit in the bottom drawer because it would be too in depth, because we'd be trying to justify the time and effort that's gone into it. Suddenly now they're much more consolidated. They're turned around within a very short space of time, sometimes less than a couple of days, in order to do that. So we can gather the intelligence a lot quickly. We can remix content into multiple different programs much more quickly. We can personalize that content into programs much more easily, and we can tell those data stories so much better. So that's how we're using AI today. I think over a period of time, those agentic type programs will become inherent within certain tech stack. So, whilst we have created those ourselves through a 2-year program of developing AI tools that we've been on, and they're great right now, we do recognize the fact that that will just become more and more norm. And probably in the next 5 years, AI will be so embedded in the execution of account-based and marketing completely that it will just be the norm. We will just nobody will be thinking anything other than that's just the way in which we could do it. And I think if you look at some of the roadmaps of some of the big tech giants, some of that could be quite scary to other people. I just generally find it really exciting. I think we can focus, marketers can focus more on strategy. They can focus more on the measurement, what it's telling them truly. And I think the big thing they'll be able to focus on is actually how they differentiate. Because if AI is able to do all of that a lot quicker, how can people talk about humanization and being authentic and all those sorts of things, absolutely all that, but how can we really make them stand out and stuff?
And I think that's it. I think if you're not using AI, then you're kind of behind the curve. There's still a real value in what we would term doing the research for them. So there's still incredible value in having a human written value proposition, going through all that, building out a bespoke message, what we would term a rock content. So what is that real key piece? What are we doing the research of this decision-making unit for? So it may be an ebook, a webcast, call it what you will. That then to be remixed into all your additional content is where the budget savings come in. And, again, going back to what Andy was saying before about building the knowledge base, there is so much content within organizations. Something gets, traditionally a marketing team, sales say we're launching this new product. We need brochures, we need this, we need that, we need data sheets. Fantastic. There's 6 weeks of, hey, look at our new amazing product, and then it's on to the next thing. Just because it was written 6 months ago for a period in time doesn't mean it's outdated. Yes, if it's something around cybersecurity, AI, it may be a little bit outdated. Fundamentally, a lot of the stuff is still the same. A manufacturing organization will still have the same challenges. They will still be concerned around margins, the bottom line, those kind of things. So if we can bring this knowledge base together and look at a £50,000 campaign budget, and rather than spend £20,000 on content, spend £8,000 on content using Enigma Studios. I know.
What's Mike
maybe
doing to
not.
us?
No. You kind of get where I'm going, but let's say rather than 40% on content, we can spend 20% on content. That's 20% that can go on execution and delivery. So again, going back to timescales, it's another month, it's another period of data, it's higher engagements, it's better conversion rates. So the more organizations adopt AI and they begin to use it, again, to Andy's point, to reiterate, the more you can spend on aligning it and remixing it. And that's, again, right back to the top of the podcast where we said it's all about aligning strategy. If marketing have these engagements and these touch points and we know what's coming through the funnel, let's just personalize it. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just personalize it and see great engagement. And then your ROI is higher. Again, because you're missing out a step on creating content. You're missing out a step on having to go and do all this research because it already exists.
I think AI's certainly come along. And of course, there was the battle for who was going to go first with ChatGPT and so on and so forth. And I think there was such noise around that and everybody started using it. And suddenly the penny dropped for a lot of people around AI. I think we've always been curious about AI and been very 100%. Interested with where it would go. I think, like I said before, we knew there are 4 fundamentals within account-based marketing, and that's where we focus. So it's probably easier for us to really focus on those. But we also knew that knowledge and that capability wasn't going to come from within the industry. So we went outside of our industry. We went to a big tech giant, and we got some team members from there to come over and start to sort of go off into a darkened room for 6 months and work out. Well, that's what we did. So we did, and work out how can we solve these problems with AI. And they've come up with some really incredible solutions. But my point is that I think that will only continue to grow.
Yeah.
The piece I would say about AI is that I do think it is another tool for us to simplify, speed up, and really realise our ambition. And I'm not saying that with my head in the sand about AI. AI is brilliant, and I think it is going to completely change lots of things. But in our world, I think that's what it's done to date. It's just made a lot of what we know we want to do really possible. But the one thing I would say about AI as well is that people shouldn't just be using it to replicate tasks that you can do today because it just makes it easier, faster, and whatever. I think if you have to ask the question, how is AI also going to help me take this to the next step?
Yeah.
So, for example, we mentioned like personalization of being able to remix content, etc. But it's really about, well, when you're doing that, but how is it going to take it on even further?
Yeah.
And I know it's for a different podcast, but we haven't even talked about things like what AI is doing to SEO, what it's doing to paid search strategy. It's having a significant impact. And I think in the last 3 months, particularly, we've had so many clients come to us talking about the challenges that they've got around those key areas that they're just seeing volume drop off to their site through those traditional sort of channels.
Because everyone's using ChatGPT.
Because AI search is so prevalent and it's so dominant now.
I don't know how much this, and again, kind of the topic of AI, what you just mentioned, but we're seeing a massive surge, of course, in terms of time we receive a lead, like a lead, like proper lead from our website. And we ask, where do you come from, right? Like, how do you hear about us? And so many of them, ChatGPT send me here. ChatGPT send me here. It's like, wow. Without even, and I have to be honest, of course we have done work, but SEO is one, compared to AI optimization is much higher SEO for our industry. And it's amazing the changes that it's bringing here, right? So I don't know if that's the same thing that happened to you, that you could measure that as well on your end, but just taking the AI bit in ABM, specific to ABM, right? I think that if we have to just summarize it as to me at least, what I'm hearing here in a single positive thing is that it's opening the door to efficient, effective ABM to small and medium enterprises, for sure. It's no longer something for massive companies that want to. No. It's making everything much simpler, much straightforward, and to have that effective, positive results that we just discussed during this podcast.
Absolutely. I think for ABM, AI is really exciting.
Yeah.
Genuinely really exciting because, we can, like I said, we can really realize those ambitions. Imagine organizations know that they want to do a one-to-one program, right, into 50 accounts. I know one or two big enterprises that we've worked with where they're probably running one-to-one programs into that number of accounts and more in some cases. Okay, so you've created a publication, right, and it's on a report of some description, but ideally you'd love to personalize that into 50. Imagine that happening historically. A, how much time would that have taken to drop in? B, how much budget would that be taking up? So the reality is that's never going to get signed off as a program, right? Yeah. But we're now able to do that so efficiently. So by building an agentic workflow that says, here's a report, go off, do some research on organization A, come back with the research, analyze that, work out what of that research looks like it's relevant to that particular document. Now I'd like you to update this document specifically for this account that pulls out within the document key areas that organization should focus on. Okay. Now I deliver that PDF document to a C-level in a personalized manner that says, hi, C-level, here's a report I thought you'd be interested in. I've pulled out all the key points, and that's delivered by somebody from within sales in an email or indeed via a LinkedIn in-mail to a new prospect account. That will make impact. Yeah. That's where AI becomes really exciting because suddenly, well, that's a use case that we've done, for example. Yeah. But suddenly that becomes so much more achievable than ever before. Yeah. So all the ambition of ABMers historically is suddenly, in my opinion, it's all on the table now. It's all available because AI is going to allow it. It's
all about that efficiency, isn't it? From a cost and fundamentally a budget perspective. As Andy was alluding to the example there, to do 50 of those reports would be weeks, if not months, AI, once we get the machine learning up and running, it's a couple of weeks. Yes, there's still, a bit of design resource from a human in the loop, but it's so quick to do it and so cost effective to do it, and I kind of want to joke about it, but Andy's talking about, we've produced this report for account A, B, and C, and we're going to get the sales guys to deliver it. You can use AI to remix that report to help then create the messaging. So again, it's just another efficiency, and it all comes back to what we were saying right at the top is this core piece of content that's come from marketing. We've personalized it really quickly, really efficiently, really budget friendly. We've then remixed it really efficiently, really budget friendly into all the other things that we need for fundamentally a campaign in a box that we can just go over to sales and say, there you go, Dan, there's your ebook, there's your emails, there's your LinkedIn, there's your social, off you go.
I mean, another one on AI, sorry. It's amazing, isn't it? How long did we take to get to AI? Normally on a podcast, right? In a marketing podcast, AI is first on the agenda. So that's good. That's good in some way. But let me put this to you, because this is an interesting question for you. So when I think about AI and how we're using it on actual content delivery, if we start to think about programmatic, so how far away do you think we are from a vision of I see an ad, okay, that's specifically targeted to me as an organisation in the way that we've talked about, which is happening today. I click on that ad, I download a piece of content, or I engage with a piece of content, no gated content, I'm just engaging with that content. You will know that person's engaged with that content, and the next ad that you do is not informed by, if we think you've downloaded that, you're going to get this. But it could even look at where they get to within the content. If we're using software like, I don't know, Turtle or something like that, so we can see where they're getting to within the software. Now to come back so that the programmatic ad is then relevant to what AI is recognizing as what the next thing is that you would be interested in. How far do you think we are from that within programmatic?
So I think that's something that, in a way, that's something that we've always been able to do, right? However, that did require a lot of effort, not only in terms of teams making all of that, but also the limitation that we had on, like we said, in terms of personalizing the content itself, depending on where the person was, right? So that's something that could somewhat be done and can be done, but it requires a lot of effort, and therefore the campaign has to be massive. However, now thanks to AI, the way that we can create and deliver all of these ads, it's way more bespoke and way more customized the way that we can do it. Again, because of the speed that we have and the automation that we have in terms of generating all of the content and the creatives themselves without having to have any kind of human interaction and make it all automatic. In terms of AI, in programmatic, has affected in many, many ways. But to me, at least in the creative perspective and analysis, of course, but the creative perspective of generating all of that content to be delivered to users, not only on an awareness phase, but also retargeting as well, has been absolutely crazy. And it's going more and more and more. And now we're going and delving into, still slowly, but more into video and interactive ads like rich media, etc. The next step is video, to me. I think that's what we still need a little bit more time to be able to create content in video for ads that is palatable. It's not something that, as some people would say, is AI slop. There you go. Like, this is not. I'm not interested in this because I immediately can tell where it is. But quality content and quality ads, I think that is the next step that we're going to see in the next year, a massive advance in this regard. And the next one, like I said, will be interactive rich media ads. That's what's going to make the biggest difference. In terms of analysis, yes, there's always an advance in there, and something that has affected a lot on and I'm talking about performance in general, the mobile performance. I'm not focusing on ABM at the moment, so I'm talking programmatic in general. But the creative space, at least for me, is where it's made the biggest difference in the programmatic space. Sure.
And this is why this sort of partnership is so valuable to us.
Exactly.
Because we're right at the very forefront of that. So, I think there's lots of, we're tech agnostic. I know Mike's mentioned it, but we have to be, we're fundamentally tech agnostic because we deal with a number of clients that all use different tech platforms. So, we've got a real good understanding across a broad brush of tech platforms. And there's lots of tech platforms that are, doing some of all of these different things. But there is no substitute for them being able to have a conversation with somebody like you to then tell us, A, where we are right now, but B, what's coming, And that is the big difference. I think, that. Yeah. So,
exactly. Sure. You won't believe this, but we're coming to an end.
Oh, would. Already? I would.
Already.
We've waxed lyrical.
So, as a final thought, I think would be interesting to hear from both of you separately. Where do you think that with AI and all the changes that are coming to in the industry in tech, where is ABM going in the next 5 years? What do you think is going to change from where we are at the moment, where we have been until now, in the next 5 years for ABM? Start, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only ever going to increase. I think that's a given. ABM is a buzzword, much as AI, cybersecurity, everyone seems to think they need to talk around it and do it. We still come up with, a lot of clients that are at the early stages of this, they're probably more account-based demand versus getting into true ABM, but it's because they're being driven from the C-suite. You need to go and focus on ABM. So I think for me, it's only ever going to increase. We got to it late, but AI is only ever going to accelerate that. If we take the ABM program as a bar as 100%, for me, there's going to be a real shift, and I'm probably stealing some of Andy's thunder, that rather than being 20% strategy, 60% content, 20% reporting, AI is going to allow us to really be 40% strategy, 20% content, 40% reporting, because AI in all its efficiencies will enable us to do the content creation, the remix, the personalization, so we can really get into the weeds of understanding the accounts, where we're winning, using the data, all of these kind of things that we've talked about for the last hour and a half, to then make actionable reports showing up. We're delivering the reports that are needed to. We're talking to the right decision makers, and fundamentally delivering ABM from a new customer acquisition right down to the most important deal pursuit, retaining contracts, all those kind of things. Yeah. So I suppose to summarize what I've said in a roundabout way, AI will only accelerate it, and there's going to be a real focus more on aligning strategy and the reporting to deliver the outcomes, more so within existing accounts and acquiring new accounts.
Great. Andy?
I'd just add to that slightly in that account-based marketing will fundamentally, I think, be drawn more towards being fundamental, central marketing strategy. I think that's going to become more prevalent as we start to learn how we can measure all interactions with accounts and start to see where accounts might sit. I think AI is only going to accelerate that. It's going to basically allow us to get rid of the noise, have the real focused on really key accounts, allow us to personalize content. As Mike said, that middle piece, it's going to allow all of the activation to become so much more efficient over a period of time. At the top end, it's going to allow the data to become so much more precise. And at the bottom part, it's going to allow us to interrogate that data and interpret that data to be, well, just 10 times better than what it is now. So I think as a program, it will sit very much center to marketing. I think it will become 10 times more efficient. And I think it will become significantly more effective. You'll see numbers of volumes of clicks, engagements, impressions reduce as we become much more targeted, as we become much more accurate with targeting, but you will see better conversions as a result of that.
And most importantly, where do you see ABM going over the next 5 years?
Now. Jake.
I do think that in terms of ABM, and that's again taking a little bit on the programmatic side of things, because we have not only AI accelerating things, which I completely agree with you on this, but also on programmatic, we're having lots of changes and innovations thanks to AI, and also because the industry itself is changing, and we're bringing way more transparency into the game for all of our clients, right? So there's still a lot of DSPs out there that are not transparent, that they're not sharing all the data, that they're not showing all the ad placements, and therefore that data that we're discussing, that we're mentioning, cannot be used. So with the accelerant of AI itself and the transparency that programmatic is bringing as well, I believe that we will see a massive change in the next 5 years. And also for what we just said, that AI is allowing small and medium-sized enterprises, businesses, to be able to access this, and that will also change the game and the offering that we have in the ABM industry.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that the next 5 years, 100% will be an incredible change.
Yeah, it's not just an enterprise program, is it?
Exactly. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming. I think
Thanks
that
for
we'll
having
have
us.
to do another
Do
session
another
as
one.
well
Yeah, let's do another
around
one.
AI.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah.
I'd enjoy
We'll wait
that.
for next time. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers, then.